What's up, everybody? It's Rob here, and today we're going to be going over the Wednesday nightly watch list. So stay tuned to figure out what went down in the stock market today and what to keep your eyes open for tomorrow. To start off, I wanted to talk about Pfizer, and we actually had a continuation of the news from yesterday. So if you tuned in to the nightly watch list last night, you would have learned that during the day yesterday, right, when the stock popped off originally, right, the Trump administration and Pfizer actually inked a deal so that way Pfizer would not be tariffed, okay, at all on their pharmaceutical company. So basically, short story short, was that Pfizer agreed to lower their prices, all right, while at the same time selling most of their drugs through this platform called Trump RX, which is really interesting. But this run actually continued into today. I mean, what you could see here from today's movement was that, the market opened, right? There was some profit taking going on in the morning, but if we zoom out a bit right now, I mean, Pfizer continued to pop another 7% today, okay? And that created an insane opportunity. This news yesterday continued in today on the option chain. We're talking over 2,000% returns. So what I have for you down at the bottom here on this chart is the Pfizer $25 option call, okay? 25 strike option call. Well, this one's actually 25 and a half, but regardless, all right, they expire, all right, on the 3rd of October. So what you could see here is, all right, if you got in, right, on the 30th, right, on that news sell-off candle, all right, you could have got in for 10 cents. Okay, now, an option contract is for 100 shares, so when it says 10 cents, it actually means $10. So you would have paid $10 for this naked call, right, this option call. Now, that call ran all the way up today, all right, to $2, so $200. You could have turned, right, $10, okay, into $200 by being on top of the news, right, being quick, analyzing the news, and making smart decisions. So that's why I wanted to follow up today with the news from yesterday, not only because it's huge news, right, coming out of the administration and for Pfizer, but once again, it shows that if you follow the news and you stay locked in, you can hit opportunities like this and make 2,000%. All right, so let's jump into what actually happened today. So the government shutdown began today because the Democrats and the Republicans did not agree on a spending bill. And what I wanted to share with you guys today is that with the prediction market, Kalshi, okay, the prediction market is actually betting on an average of 9.5 days of shutdown this year. So most people go, well, how long do these usually last? And, the duration of this. And I think that, the prediction markets kind of can answer that question for you, and it's interesting. So the market's saying 9.5 days for the government shutdown. And today was the first day of that. Which, I was telling you guys earlier on the other watch list not to take it too seriously, because you can see today the market was actually up around 1/3%. So the market was green today. Okay, market ran up today, even though there was a government shutdown, and that's because the market is forward thinking. Okay, the market prices stuff in, but it's forward thinking. All right, I just told you the prediction markets are, expecting the government shutdown to only last 9.5 days. So if the market knows that eventually a spending bill will be passed, okay, well, the market's not going to freak out and sell off of that. And, this has been repeated over time and time again. So that's what kicked off the day today, the big news, coming in today, the government shutdown. Also, we got a headline for Walmart. So let me pull that up for you. Walmart. Okay, right here. So Walmart actually plans to eliminate artificial dyes, okay, from its U.S. brands. They said they would do this by January 2027. and they're also going to remove 30 other ingredients. Now, this was a big headline because it actually sent the stock down. Pre-market, this news came out, and the stock went from $102, right, sold off to $100, okay? And it had this support line here. I mean, if you pull out on the chart, let's go, let's pull this chart out. Okay, you can see here that, $100 is the support line, okay? So this was negative news, and the stock bounced off of support at $100. And we might say, well, Rob, why is this negative that Walmart plans to eliminate artificial dyes? Well, that's because it's a huge cost to the company, right, and a big change to their business. And they've been getting pressure from the current Trump administration, okay, to make foods more healthy and get rid of these artificial dyes, such as Red 20. So this was big news, sent the stock down this morning. Something to be on watch for. I mean, nothing too crazy, right? It was just a play you could have snipped in the morning, right? A little move down, but once again, they guaranteed to do this by 2027, so they have a lot of time to implement this change, okay? And at the end of the day, right, bearish in the short term, but long term, right, they could adapt to this very, quickly and not have a detrimental impact on their business. All right. Next thing I want to talk about is NVIDIA, ticker symbol NVDA. So, NVIDIA became the first company in history, okay, to close above a $4.5 trillion market cap. Okay, so that is news that I wanted to share with you because the AI bubble, I mean, it just continues to, be prevalent and show up. I mean, last night we had, the White House was live and we had Trump sign in a bill where, he would guarantee to put money towards AI for cancer research towards kids. And they had a whole presser about that last night. So, AI is still at the front. Everyone's focused. It's really hyped up. Okay, all the names are running, and it became the first company to close above a $4.5 trillion market cap. All right. I also wanted to talk about economic data that came out this morning. So if you watched the last watch list, I showed you guys the economic calendar and important economic data to be on the watch for. And this morning we had the ADP jobs report. So that's an economic data point where ADP is a payroll company, and they report how many jobs were gained or lost, and that's important because then investors can see, okay, well, how is the labor market doing? Or is unemployment going to tick up, or is it going to go down? And that actually ties to, most recently, federal interest rate cuts. Because if you see, right, the ADP job report going up, okay, well, that means, or, unemployment going up, right, with the ADP job report, well, that signals the Fed's going to cut rates possibly because they want to stimulate the economy if, companies are starting to lay off employees. So, what I wanted to share with you here, okay, here are my notes that I'm showing you. Summary of the U.S. September ADP jobs report. Okay, the U.S. economy lost 32,000 jobs in September. Okay, and this was a bad miss because there was actually a forecast of a gain of 52,000 jobs. Okay, that actually follows a big downward revision from the month of August, where we only lost 3,000 jobs, compared to a previously reported increase of 54,000 jobs. You see, I want, the key takeaway from, this ADP jobs report is that this does point to a slowing labor market, which we've seen the Federal Reserve talk about, okay, in their Fed minutes when they go to make an interest rate decision. Jerome Powell comes out, you get the interest rate news, and then he comes out and has a speech, talks about the market. And, that was one of the key drivers of the last cut, was this slowing labor market. It actually raised the chances today of a 50 basis point Fed rate cut in October. So traders are actually increasing their expectations for 2 additional Federal Reserve rate cuts this year. Okay, now rate cuts, predominantly support investments in risk assets. So when the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates, you'll normally see risk assets go up, like crypto and tech. And there's another side of the coin to this, because yes, rate cuts can be good for the market, but it can be bad because the Federal Reserve, once again, could be signaling that a recession is up and coming. So always remember, think of this both ways. Now, this ADP jobs report numbers, usually quickly forgotten because the government, it's called the government BLS jobs report, that actually comes out 2 days later. But with the government shutdown and data being delayed, this might be the only data point for a bit. So, while the Federal Reserve's sitting here going, well, what are we going to do, for our next, rate cut decision? And we're thinking about, the labor market, right? And our interest rate decision. Well, they're not getting any of the government data right now. So this will be the main labor market data point that we have right now. Okay, so next piece of news is Reddit. So I'm going to pull that up here for you. Reddit actually came down 12% today, and that's because they actually had weakness to their stock, which was tied to concerns about the amount of internet traffic they're getting, because investors noticed that ChatGPT was actually using Reddit as a source less. Now, that caused a sharp decline, as you can see, in Reddit stock price today, because ChatGPT is going to rely less on Reddit's content as, a source when users, do their inquiries. And the data point that had the stock go down 12% was that it actually dropped. ChatGPT, roughly 15% of their citations included Reddit, okay, in early September. But by the end of the month, only 5%. So now you have this big debate on going, okay, well, is Reddit, where you actually have, individuals and users' opinions on there, a good data source? So going forward, that's going to present an interesting opportunity, because we had a big move in the stock today. Okay, it's going to create volatility, and if, depending on how you view that, presents opportunity. If you think, okay, well, Reddit is actually a good source for information, and it should be included, and if you think, maybe ChatGPT will reverse this decision, could provide an awesome opportunity. And if not, if they start to include Reddit from ChatGPT entirely, well, here you go. Here's the big reaction. And let me zoom the chart out for you. As you can see, we actually hit a high here, stock on $282, and been selling off now. Big move down, right? Just today, 12% to $202. So big news for, once again, AI, which has been driving the market not only up, but you can see it can also cause names to come down, just like Reddit here. All right, so the next news is LAC. Now, for those not familiar, this isn't a big name, okay, that you predominantly are aware of, but, okay, what you can actually see here, LAC, Lithium Americas. Now, what I wanted to talk about here was that the shares jumped 32% after the Department of Energy said on Tuesday, okay, that it plans to take a 5% equity stake, okay, in the lithium miner. So, why is this important? Well, lithium is important for batteries, okay? Now, the stock pumped a bunch because the government's taking a 5% equity stake, but you have to remember, this ties back to Intel stock, where the government just took a stake in them. So you're seeing this trend of the government getting involved with these equity stakes in different companies. Now, to be determined if it's a positive or negative thing, but the market takes it positively at first, because when you have someone like the U.S. government backing you, or they have an unlimited money printer machine, well, I would say, that's kind of a good thing for a business that needs capital. So that was the news for LAC. So keep an eye out for that. Jumped up, government taking a 5% equity stake, just like the Intel deal. All right. Next thing we have here is Netflix, which I wanted to share with you here. So they actually were down this morning, okay, because Elon Musk posted today on X, all right, that users should cancel their Netflix subscriptions, okay? And he was trying to kind of start this wave of a boycott. So the stock was down, you can see here, a little bit over 2% today on the news that Elon Musk, was trying to start a boycott and telling everyone to cancel their Netflix subscriptions, right? Because he believes that they push, more left-leaning ideology, right, in their TV shows and movies. So that was the reason why he said it. And on top of that, right, once again, I'm always referring to the previous watch list, because if you guys stay locked in, you'll be able to keep up on everything. And like I was saying before, all right, the Trump administration did mention for Netflix, okay, 100% tariffs on movies made in foreign countries, okay? So you pair that with now Elon Musk coming out and saying that everyone should cancel their Netflix subscriptions, well, caused a big move down. If I pull this chart out, right, you can see we've been coming down into a little bit of a downtrend here. So you're really interested, right, to keep watching that, seeing where that goes, right, with the tariff news and Elon Musk, opinion on them. Maybe people will listen, maybe they won't. All right. And speaking of Elon, I wanted to talk about Tesla. Now, right, yesterday, the EV tax credit ended because, that was the end of that bill by the government shutdown, because before in the spending bill they had the EV tax credits, now they don't. All right. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that originally people thought, oh no, right, with the EV tax credit going away, well, maybe that will lower the demand for Tesla. Okay. Now, the stock is up 3% because tomorrow morning, all right, we're actually going to get delivery numbers for Tesla. So we're actually going to see, how many cars people took delivery of. So those numbers will be coming out in the morning, and the market's trying to front run that news at pop 3% because the market, all right, the investors in the market are saying, well, we actually think demand for Teslas are going to be higher because people front run the tax credit expiring. So there's a lot of demand because everyone says, well, I want to buy the Tesla now because that way I will get the $7,500 tax credit because it is expiring. So we're going to see here tomorrow in the morning, all right, how those numbers actually turned out. And you know what, going forward, with the tax credit not being here, we'll see how it plays out in the name. All right, what else I got here for you? Big news coming once again, Intel, okay, hot name like I was just telling you, with the 5% government equity stake, okay, here you go with Intel, all right, they popped 7% today, okay, now they're running, right, it has a whole bunch of news attached to it, but on the day, all right, Intel, all right, let me pull this actually to the daily chart so you can kind of see this. All right, see this big candle here? All right, boom, the move up. All right, that's because a news headline came out and right causes big moves to the market. But what I wanted to show you was that the reason for this move, all right, the headline was that Intel is actually in early talks to add AMD as one of their customers in their foundry. Now this is huge because you're just getting good news out of Intel, all right? I mean, you know, you have SoftBank, getting, they invested money, the government's backing it. You also have, now say AMD becoming a customer. And a couple days ago, we just had NVIDIA, right? They came out and they said that they wanted to be a part of this action, so they teamed up with Intel. So it's just good news upon good news upon good news. The stock is up 7% today on that. All right, but like I was warning, all right, the earnings are coming up for Intel, which you can see here, October 30th at the end of the month. Okay, now that's important because we're getting this huge run up. But what you might see is a lot of profit taking coming into the earnings, okay? And possibly, if it's a bad earnings report and the stock sells off, that could provide us, all right, an entry point into the name if you haven't been in yet. All right, so keep an eye out on it. All right, it's a really hot name right now, but earnings are coming up, and that's a risk. And some people might be taking some chips off the table and selling the name down. So keep that in mind. Also, big news coming here with GoodRx, GDRX. Okay. Now, this ties in to the news I was talking to you earlier, okay, where I was saying that, with Pfizer, okay, where they had their news where Trump would be, creating this government site called TrumpRx, where, you could customers could go to buy directly their, pharmaceutical products, okay. Well, a little rumor came out, right? We're still waiting on confirmation for this, okay, but news came out today. It said GoodRx, right? They popped 19%, right, from the open yesterday to the close today on rumor news that the CEO was discussing with Trump, right, conversations to partner together. Because GoodRx, is a website and buy pharmaceutical products. They're going to possibly team up with the Trump administration. Okay, so it caused the stock to get lifted. Now, this news kind of flew under the radar today, all right? This wasn't, main news where CNBC was trying to push the news, all right, causing the move up. Okay, you had this little headline come out, this rumor, all right, and now the stock's trading sideways. So, if we get confirmation of this news, okay, you're going to see this thing run up absolutely crazy, okay? I mean, this is a big name to be on the watch for, okay? Look for the confirmation of this news, okay? And this thing is going to fly. So, next thing I wanted to talk about was DraftKings. You're saying, Rob, what is going on with DraftKings? Well, DraftKings is actually down 6% today, okay, just today. And if we pull out in the last 10 days, all right, let me go shorter out time frame, okay, you can see, all right, 9:30, all right, so yesterday, the stock was trading at $42, okay, and now the market closed it at 35. Like, what the heck happened here? Well, overnight, the prediction market website Kalshi, okay, they actually came out news that they're going to be offering parlays for sports betting, okay? So DraftKings is down 6% on that news because now it has increased competition, right? And that's going to affect the demand. So, Kalshi here in the prediction markets are really, really kicking up, and it's going to be really interesting to see, how this plays out. But that's one of the things I've been warning people about DraftKings and why we don't have it in our long-term portfolio is that, there's a lot of competition to this name. All right, not only do you have, the legal side of gambling, but you have an underground market, okay, that these sports books have to compete with. And on top of it, on the legal side, lots of competitors. I mean, DraftKings has to compete with FanDuel, ESPN Bet, MGM, okay, just tons of competition for, getting people to bet on your site. And now another competitor, Kalshi. So stock dropped 6% on that news. So guys, that is all the news I have for you today on the Nightly Watchlist. Okay, now once again, like I was telling everyone, right, stay locked in with the news. Okay, you'll be able to see, get a pulse on the market, know why it's going up and down, okay? Stay locked into the watch list, okay? I'm providing you all the news that you need to know, what's going to move it up and down, okay? So, once again, I'm going to show you my notes here, so that way you can get a little bit of a recap of what went down, right? We have the government shutdown today, okay? Kalshi markets averaging 9.5 days of the shutdown this year, all right? Boom. Walmart plans to eliminate artificial dyes, sent the stock down this morning. NVIDIA became the first company to close above a $4.5 trillion market cap, okay? And then we had the ADP jobs report, all right, where we saw a big loss in jobs, okay? And it's meaningful this time because, right, the government data is not getting released because the government shut down, okay? So keep that in mind. Also, we have Reddit here. That stock fell down 12% because ChatGPT is using Reddit data less for search queries. So very important news which caused the move down. Also, we see here LAC, Lithium Americas, another name where the government's taken an equity stake, caused the shares to jump 32% overnight. Okay, Netflix, right? Like we said before, you're seeing that tariff news, 100% tariff on foreign-made movies, but at the same time, CEO Elon Musk came out and said that everyone should cancel their Netflix subscriptions based on their left-leaning propaganda, as he calls it, and it's kicking off a wave of a boycott. So, something to keep a watch there. Also, Tesla, right, ran up today. What was it? About 3% ahead of the delivery data in the morning. So, the shares are rising as analysts expect strong September deliveries, and they expect strong deliveries because they expected a surge in demand before the 7,500 EV tax credit expires. All right. Also, Tesla hit a 9-month high after the company hiked lease prices for U.S. vehicles. Okay, so that was another reason for the move today. And Intel is in early talks to add AMD as a foundry customer, so that's something to keep an eye on, AMD and Intel. And then, you know, big news here that could really fly. GoodRx, right, up 16% that news. But this news came out at sort of the end of the market today, and there was no confirmation. And a lot of the media didn't cover it. So let's see where this name opens up in the morning. And lots of opportunity out there. All right, DraftKings was down on the Kalshi parlays. So let's see where this all takes us. All right, stay locked in. We're going to make money. We're going to be quick to the news. All right, we're going to hit the plays on the option chain. We're going to make great long-term investments, and we're going to keep the party going. Let's go, baby. All right, guys. Peace.